It's been 3 years since I made my top 10 favorite movies of all time video, and I figured that I pretty much gave a solid answer of what my favorite movies were. But within the 3 years I was pursuing a creative writing degree, I exposed myself to more mediums of storytelling, and my opinions began to shift on what I consider what was good, mediocre, or just plain hot garbage. Through exposing myself to more mediums of storytelling, I found myself rewatching movies I've watched before, and watching movies that every film connoisseur had watched. And you know how they say your opinions or taste changes as you get older? Well, mine definitely did. Hence why I'll be talking about my top 10 current favorite movies. This list isn't set in stone, and I don't claim to be the know-it-all film buff, but this list was created for the purpose of sharing how they've currently resonated with me, and also allows me to give my opinion on why these films are currently, keyword currently, my favorite films. No, I'm not going to watch Mojo my video up by going number 10, 9, 8, blah 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 blah. I'm going to keep this in a simple, well thought out format, even if I do ramble on a bit. Without further ado, let's begin. Now hear me out. I know this project didn't exactly start out as a film, but I'm willing to make an exception just this once. I thought this was a film the first time I looked it up on Amazon, and didn't find out until afterwards that it was a series on Machinima.
Member Machinima? Oh, I member.
Street Fighter Assassin's Fist was an online web series directed by Joey Ansa, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and follows the backstory of Ken, Ryu, and their master Goken before the events of the Street Fighter games. The series aired on the Machinima channel in 2014 and was later distributed to home video by Funimation. Before this movie/series, you know what? I saw it as a movie, so I'll just refer to it as a movie, just to make things easier. In 2014, when this was released as a series, I was still really invested in Call of Duty and The Evil Within, so I didn't gravitate towards fighting games as much. Sure, I grew up playing them, but they never stuck with me 100%. Come 2020 and quarantine, I decided to get back into fighting games, Street Fighter V being one of them, and I go looking for the series, which has now been converted into an entire film. Assassin's Fist is a project made by fans of the video game, and you can really feel the love and respect they gave towards it. Not only that, but they tell a dynamic story about brotherhood. Throughout the movie, we get to see two types of brotherly bonds. The present, which is between Ryu and Ken, and the past, between Goken and Goki. I really love the master and student storytelling trope made famous by films like Karate Kid, and when I get to see famous fighting game characters like Ryu and Ken go through training like this, it humanizes them for me, and in my opinion is what makes them feel more complex. And when I hear Ryu's theme and the melody of the flute play, I feel goosebumps all over, and soon a surge of energy rushes through my body, and it makes me want to throw a fireball and yell, Hadouken! It's a bit silly, but I can't deny the fact on how great it makes me feel. Green Book is a movie based on a true story, and stars Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali. Cut that! Green Book is a movie based on a true story, and stars Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali. Or in other words, Aragorn and Blade. The movie takes place during the 1960s and follows Viggo's character Tony, who is hired by Mahershala's Dr. Donald Shirley to help him drive through Southern America since he's a pianist in a band and is touring. As they share the road and tour, we get to learn more and more about these two characters and see their struggles and triumphs. Amazing performances come from both Mortensen and Ali, and their chemistry on screen is just so heartwarming. When I first watched this movie, I was smiling all the way through. Majority of my favorite scenes come from when they're in the car, especially the scene when Tony is telling Doc to try KFC. And yeah, I know, I'm aware of that. Stereotypes aside, it's a very fun scene and really shows their characters. Tony is a guy who's very chill and just wants to live a little. Doc, on the other hand, is very formal and keeps to himself, but is able to come out of his shell a bit through his road trip with Tony. Both grow for the better from one another as the film progresses. One particular scene that really tugs at my heartstrings is after Tony and Doc's encounter with a racist police officer. The two begin debating whether it was right or wrong for Tony to hit him, to which Tony points out how, quote, unblack Doc is, to the point where Doc tells Tony to pull over, and we get this scene.
You have to live in a castle, Tony! Alone! And rich white people pay me to play piano for them because it makes them feel cultured. But as soon as I step off that stage, I go right back to being just another nigga to them. Because that is their true culture. And I suffer that slight alone because I'm not accepted by my own people, because I'm not like them either. So if I'm not black enough, and if I'm not white enough, and if I'm not man enough, then tell me, Tony, what am I?
This speaks volumes to me as a human being. Sure, I don't know the experience of African Americans, but the experience of not knowing who you are or what you are trying to achieve is universal. Everybody is unsure if they're doing enough in certain areas of their lives, and they will always question the integrity of it. This scene in particular pointed that out to me and made me question my own life. You see, I love it when all types of media makes you reflect on your own life too, but doesn't shove a lesson down your throat. Which is probably why I love this movie. It makes you feel good, yet it's able to still remind you enough of reality to the point where it's not lecturing you. And I completely forgot this won Best Picture of 2019. It definitely deserves it. Well deserved. The movie Gook, written, directed, and starring Justin Chon, takes place in 1992 Los Angeles and follows two Korean brothers, Eli and Daniel, who own a shoe store and befriends a young girl named Camilla. It's a day-in-the-life movie about two families before and during the LA riots. However, family has different meanings to our characters. Brothers Eli and Daniel are a family, but they're only together because their parents aren't with them anymore, and they have to run their shoe store in order to survive and make income. Camilla, our younger character, is also in the same situation where she has no parents and lives with her siblings, yet when she's at home, her siblings feel distant, whereas when she's with Eli and Daniel, she feels at home. Justin Chon offers a perspective of the LA riots, and does it through the story of these two families. The choice of also making the entire film black and white gave it a noir-esque aesthetic for me, to the point where I forget that the movie was black and white because I was so infatuated with the characters. Overall, the movie offers some laughs, tears, and sadness for me. It's a movie I can't say much on without spoiling the experience. You just have to watch it for yourself and form your own opinion. This biopic about the life of British rock star Freddie Mercury is one hell of a movie. When you get a biopic about artists, you cannot, I repeat, cannot, make a biopic about music artists and not use their music. It's a given that you must. Rami Malek portrays Freddie Bolsora, Freddie Mercury, as we see him start out as a college band singer and slowly rise to stardom as Queen's frontman. Back this up with great music made by the original band, and an engaging story of rags to riches, and you got yourself Bohemian Rhapsody. As we watch the film, we grow along with Freddie and we sympathize with him as he develops into the frontman everyone knows and loves. Not only is the story and music great, but the performance from Rami Malek is so hypnotizing that it almost looks like you're seeing Freddie Mercury in the flesh. Not to mention, Gwilym Lee, the actor who plays Queen's guitarist Brian May, looks just like Brian May. Look at him. Just look at him. I had heard of Queen's music before, like Don't Stop Me Now and Shaun of the Dead, and Another One Bites the Dust, but this was the film that really got me more into their music and made me appreciate it more. I especially like the scene when they're trying to record the titular Bohemian Rhapsody. I was never a big music nerd, and really only listened to whatever matched my mood, without giving a second thought to the process it took to get made. However, Bohemian Rhapsody reminds me that there are musicians who with great passion and artistry who put their blood, sweat, and tears into orchestrating sounds that speak to the souls of many. And given how music changes a lot throughout the years, I say Bohemian Rhapsody is a good reminder of that. When I was a little kid, I watched bits and pieces of the Lord of the Rings films, but never really soaked up the story, characters, or fantasy elements. It wasn't until a little show called Game of Thrones fell onto my radar where I gained a craving for everything fantasy, which is what also brought me back to the Lord of the Rings. While these movies would have been really lengthy to a younger me, rewatching them as a young adult now and being able to identify storytelling elements makes it all more enjoyable. From the intriguing characters to the beautiful visuals, The Lord of the Rings keeps you engaged on this long journey from beginning, middle, and end. And while that might just be my perception of the movie, for casual viewers, I'd say it could be a chore to watch, but if you're willing to set aside a few hours and watch just one, or maybe even all three movies, and just soak in all the fantasy elements that come your way, you're going to enjoy it. Now, why did I put 3 films in one category, you may ask? Well, it's because to me, Lord of the Rings is actually a 6 to 7 hour movie that just happens to be split into 3 parts. I originally thought about just praising Return to the King and how the finality of the trilogy wraps up everything perfectly, but then I felt like I was leaving out everything great that came before it, like the scene in the Mines of Moria, Battle of Helm's Deep, and way too many memorable moments to list. The entire trilogy comes together too well for me to just choose one that I like, because honestly, I like all three. Fellowship shows the start of the journey and reminds us that it's not going to be an easy one. Two Towers continues the journey, but expands upon the land of Middle-earth and the conflict surrounding it. And Return of the King wraps up everything nicely by confronting the large conflict, and seeing our characters finally complete their arcs. Also, how the hell can I not mention the music within these films? My god. You're all probably going to be disappointed in me, but this was the first Tarantino film I've watched in the theaters, and boy was it an amazing experience. And it wasn't even that long ago either. The days of pre-quarantine. I still remember sitting in the Alamo Drafthouse cushion seat. Sure, my wallet was crying, but the apple and bacon aroma coming from my Royale with cheese, the chewy Reese's Pieces milkshake, and that salty-ass popcorn taste that remained in my mouth long after the movie finished. Ugh! While Once in Hollywood is not my first Tarantino film I've seen, it is the movie that got me to really appreciate filmmaking again, and the idea of Hollywood. Sure, Hollywood nowadays seems like it's bogged full of superhero films and agenda-driven narratives, which is a whole thing in itself. Quentin Tarantino gives us a fantasy world of what Hollywood is to him, and what it used to be like. The film takes place in 1969 Hollywood, and tells the story of actor Rick Dalton and his stunt double Cliff Booth as they live their day-to-day lives in Hollywood. Rick, a once famous TV actor, is now trying to make his way into film, and Cliff, his best friend slash stunt double, is just along for the ride. At first I was a bit disappointed at how less action heavy the film was, but still appreciated the glimpse of classic Hollywood that Tarantino gave us. After more rewatches, and being offered some different perspectives from YouTubers, I began to appreciate the film more and more. One thing I'd like to say without spoiling the film for new viewers, is that Tarantino uses the concept of the actor and the stunt double neatly. Almost a duality of some sort. Rick is the face of the movie and acts, but Cliff does all the grunt work and is the one to take the hits. I had a similar dilemma here, like how I did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Do I choose one, or choose them all? But both movies were too cohesively connected that I couldn't just single one out. Not only that, but I was stuck in between either including Goodfellas on number 4 or the Godfather films, and felt Godfather was more memorable. Don't worry, Goodfellas made it to the honorable mentions list. So, where do I begin? Al Pacino. Al Pacino is fucking great in this movie. I only knew about him through Scarface, which is also a good film, but I really love how he portrays Michael Corleone. In part 1, he's just your average Joe who's trying to distance himself away from his mafia family, but eventually he has to stick up for himself. And in part 2, he's become his own man with his own struggles, and you get to see how he goes through that. I also gotta mention other somewhat familiar faces that I've seen before in other movies. Does he look familiar to you? Jor-El is the motherfucking Godfather. She looks familiar, right? Might have seen her in the pet shop or something, and Yo, Adrian! And who is this?
Dad!
Yep, that's him. Jokes aside, I think the cast does well with what they're given. Yes, I know Brando was a pain in the ass for Coppola to work with, but by putting distance between actor and character, Vito's a family man first and a businessman second. After all,
because a man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man.
I guess you could say the family aspect is why I love these films so much. You're introduced to the Corleone family one by one from the beginning of the film. There's Fredo, the oldest son of the Corleone family, Sonny, the second son, Tom, the stepson, Michael, the youngest son, and Connie, the only daughter. You follow these characters throughout the two movies, and while you think the focus would be on the Godfather, we get to see the life the Godfather lives through his children. Not to say Brando barely has any scenes, but every scene he's in serves its purpose to progress the story forward. All in all, I'd recommend it to everyone. Sure, the quality of the film may feel timey to some, but the story and performances still hold up well to this day. My all-time favorite sci-fi film. This was the movie that made me fall in love with the sci-fi genre. I was 7, maybe 8? Well, whatever age it was, I was definitely too young to be seeing it. Did I mention that I fucking love Arnie? AKA The Terminator, AKA Conan the Barbarian. Let's never do those again. Total Recall is about Douglas Quaid, an average Joe in the future who wants to escape from his somewhat mundane life. And I say somewhat mundane because he's married to the smoking hot Sharon Stone. So in order to escape his mundane life, he goes to Recall where he's able to take a cheap vacation. With a few twists. But when he goes there, he discovers that he's a secret agent who's been brainwashed and now his bad guy's trying to kill him. And so, with the aid of his pre-brainwashed self, he tracks down an old ally and is sent on this crazy journey through Mars. Overall, I love this movie for its visuals, its dialogue, Arnie,
You think this is the real Quaid? It is.
special effects, and sci-fi cheesiness. My first introduction to the zombie film genre. I was 5 when I first saw this movie, and I've been in love with the zombie genre ever since. Sure, the original will always be the definitive version to most, but to me the 1990 remake, directed by Tom Savini, is more nostalgic to me. Hence why I chose it. The cast, the haunting score, the atmosphere, the visual effects, all of it still holds up to this day. I love George A. Romero and all his other zombie films, but this is what I envisioned George would have liked his film to be if he had gotten a larger budget. After all, the original was made on a budget of $114,000, but the 1990 remake was made on $4.2 million. Another reason why I love this remake is that it still respects the original while building upon it. One good example is the character of Barbara. In the original, she loses her brother and proceeds to lose her marbles, and continues to annoyingly act that way throughout the film. In the remake, she goes from traumatized to a much more mentally strong character who actually helps out the survivors. And that aspect is helped even more by Patricia Tallman's performance. The film turned Barbara from annoying damsel into the Ripley of zombie movies. Also, how could I forget my boy Candyman, aka Tony Todd, who plays Ben. Ben is even more of a badass in this movie. The guy literally fights zombies with his bare hands. He's commanding and takes the lead when the situation arises, but he's also willing to show a softer side of himself, especially when he's trying to comfort the traumatized characters. The zombies are even characters of their own, just like every other Romero zombie movie. They're not as memorable as Flyboy or Bub, but you get distinct features just to get an idea of who they were just before they turned. Highly recommend this movie to anyone who loves the zombie genre. And if you love zombie movies as much as I do, I'm pretty sure you've already seen it. Even so, give it a rewatch. I could honestly make a bunch of videos praising each and every aspect of the Evil Dead films, but I choose Evil Dead 2 over the rest because of my personal history with it. When I was 5 and still an only child, I had younger uncles who watched over me, basically akin to older brothers you could say, who would scare me with this movie for misbehaving. And let me tell you, 5-year-old me thought Henrietta was the scariest thing ever. Now, I think she's just a really disgusting grandma being played by Ted Raimi. As I look back at it in retrospect, this film is and was the basis and backbone of everything in my creative life. From the outrageous camera angles, snarky acting of Bruce Campbell, the use of special effects, and the overall story itself and the lore/mythos it builds. Not only did it scare me halfway to hell as a kid, but it creatively ingrained itself into my being and inspired me. The plot of the overall movie is pretty simple. A couple goes to a cabin in the woods as a getaway and discovers a book of the dead bound in human flesh and inked in blood, and accidentally unleash demon forces that possess and attack them. To 5-year-old Anthony, all the Deadites and their distorted voices were scary and fear-inducing as it was for the character of Ash. But once that chainsaw arm comes on and he blows the dust off the boomstick and says, "Groovy." 5-year-old Anthony is ready to take on the monsters at Ash's side and is no longer cowering behind the couch. And since I saw this film on VHS, the behind-the-scenes footage was included as a bonus after the film finished. Not only was this my very first glimpse into the world of filmmaking, but it took away the fear I had when watching it. Whoa, that old fat hag is actually a guy who got a bunch of pancake batter put on his face? What? His demon girlfriend's a puppet? How did they get her head into a vice? Why did Ash literally try to drown himself and then do it 5 more times? Why do they keep calling Ash by Hulk's name? Yeah, I fucking love everything about this movie. Boom! And that was my top 10 current favorite movies. And the list is not set in stone and is bound to change. But who knows? Maybe I might do another video in another 3 years. Although I doubt it. But I figure I'd put my my focus on the Fun Films channel. And even though this may seem like a skit or a short, quote-unquote, short film or skit dump channel. And I do have another channel also, which is like podcasting and gaming stuff. But that's all kind of put on hold at the moment because... Look outside. And I figured I'd put my writing skills to better use and put my perspectives and almost in a just ranty kind of way and start making my own videos about it. Because I mean I love films. My voice just fucking crack. I love films, video games and all that. I may as well give my perspective on them, but I think I will try to put an emphasis on mainly films for this channel. But I'm pretty sure you're tired of hearing all this from all your other content creators. But if you want to see more, you hit the sub button or subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything and when there's the next video. I don't know how to end this video, so...
I didn't see the light until I was a man, but then it was only... So you see darkness as your ally. I was born in the darkness, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was a man, but then it was only blinding.
Then Venom came out of there.